Hey everybody. So this is not a typical fishing with rod episode that you just see me going out catching a lot of fish and telling you how good the fishing is. But rather it is a pretty difficult conversation that I need to have with you guys, and it's about the current state of the Fraser River recreational fishery management. I wasn't actually sure that I was going to make this video in the first place up until a few minutes ago. And I've actually been writing up this editorial about it because a lot of people have been asking me to say something about it. But finally, I thought, well, instead of writing about it, and I keep writing it, deleting it, writing, deleting it, just not sure exactly how I should deliver that message to you guys, I decided that I should be making this video instead. So just to give you a little bit of background about myself, I've been running Fishing with Rod, the website, the YouTube channel for the last 20 years. For the last 10 years or so, I've been making videos. And throughout this time, it's not just a viable business for me to make some money, but I've actually spent quite a bit of time on trying to improve the fisheries, I guess, trying to educate. And so that involves me putting on roughly a dozen annual community events that involves teaching people how to fish, and as well as being a vice president for the Family Fishing Society for about 5 years and the public ambassador for the Freshwater Fish Society for the last decade or so. But I also sit on the Sport Fishing Advisory Committee in the Fraser Valley, which involves consultation with Fisheries and Ocean Canada when it comes to fishery openings, regulation changes. So I've been doing that since 2005, the last 15 years. So, and my background is fishery biology. I do have a bachelor degree in fishery biology at UBC. So that's kind of my background besides just catching some fish in the videos. And so I've devoted quite a bit of my time in this subject. And unfortunately, I must say, there has been quite a bit of disappointment on how things have gone in the last 10 years or so. When you spend quite a bit of time trying to make a difference, you always hope that the outcome would be a lot better than when you go into it. But in this case, I think it has gone the complete opposite way. So for those of you who are not from British Columbia, and if you don't really fish the Fraser River, I just want to give you a bit of background information on the Fraser River salmon fishery. So the Fraser River, it's one of the longest rivers in North America. It's 1,300 kilometers long, and it does have it has had one of the largest salmon runs in the world as well. So you have 5 different species of salmon. So you have Chinook salmon, coal salmon, sockeye, pink, and chum salmon, and steelhead. And these anadromous fish, meaning that they go into the ocean, spend a few years in the ocean as an adult, and then they come back into the river, and eventually they'll spawn, create babies, and then the cycle continues again. That happens every 2 to 5 years, and that has been going on forever. And along the Fraser River, you have many different tributaries. So these are small streams that runs into the Fraser, and every single tributary has its own salmon's run. Some salmon runs are very, very strong, where some salmon runs are very, very small. So they could be in the millions, or it could be down to a few thousand fish. So when these fish come back into the river, or they travel down the ocean into the river, a lot of population, though, tend to travel together. So some of the runs will overlap, and when you have fisheries along the way, these are called mixed stock fisheries. And when the fisheries take place, you could be catching fish that are from a strong population, but also you could be bycatching fish that are from a weak population. So in that case, if you are catching fish that only have a few hundred in a run, essentially you could cause that population to become extinct. And that's what has been happening in the last several decades, and actually last century, since commercial fishery began over 100 years ago. So in the last couple years, Fisheries and Oceans Canada has determined that most of the Chinook salmon and sockeye salmon runs are now endangered, meaning that there are very, very few fish are coming back. This could be due to a variety of reasons. Fishing is definitely one of them, but there are also other factors involved, such as pollution, poor ocean survival due to warm current and low productivity and things like that, and high mortality in juveniles as they travel downstream, deforestation. Many factors are involved when it comes to the decline of the salmon population. So as a result, closures are implemented, hoping that more fish will make it back to the spawning ground, and that will be the logical thing to do, so we can, be on the path of recovery, eventually have more fish again. So while some of these closures are definitely needed, so some of the early Fraser River Chinook salmon, so we now have closures from April, May, June, July, August, all the way until the end of October, because there are endangered runs coming back during most of those months. There are still a few strong, really strong salmon stocks that are coming back, such as the Shuswap Chinook salmon return, which happens around the last 2 weeks of August and the first 2 weeks of September. And as well as the Fraser River pink salmon return that happens once every 2 years. It's not happening this year, but it's happening next year. That is a great family fishery. Happens around, again, late August and early September. The department has chosen to have closures right throughout the entire season from early April, like I say, until the end of October, without looking into the possibility of having some of these openings in the middle. Suggesting that, this recreational fishery cannot be selective. We cannot fish for Chinook salmon without killing some of the endangered species such as sockeye salmon or steelhead or etc. Which we continue to disagree, and we continue to push for selective fishery regulations so that they can be implemented and we can have a fishery opening as a result. But that has been happening for the last 10 years. So in the Sport Fishing Advisory Committee, we've been pushing for that for the last 10 years, and yet every year it just doesn't get done. And I know these regulations are hard to develop and hard to implement it, but there appears to be a lack of will from the department to make that happen. So the easier thing to do would just be have a blanket closure and nobody could be fishing. So this has been a frustrating process. So every year we have been going back, trying not to push for fishery openings when conservation isn't concerned, but when conservation isn't a concern, we should have a fishery. And that is not happening right now, and I don't see it happening in the near future. We have, like I said, we have a pink salmon return next year. It's very, very unlikely that we're going to have that opening again. That is one of my favorite fisheries. The last time I got to fish it was back in 2015, and we took our 3-year-old son Elliot down, and that was the very first time he got to try out some salmon fishing, and it's lost. And that annual ritual, it no longer exists for our family, and which is pretty sad in my opinion. So while this is all happening, we do have First Nation fisheries happening in the river right now. And don't get me wrong, those fisheries need to happen because under the Canadian Constitution, First Nations have first priority when it comes to fishery access, and that's exactly what's happening right now. What I do have a problem is when it comes to the non-selectivity of the net fisheries in the river. Not the First Nation fisheries, but the method being used to capture the fish while having incidental bycatches, such as sockeye salmon, which we're trying to protect, and there is a mortality involved when it comes to these net fisheries. At the same time, there's a fair amount of poaching going on as well. That's not under control. This is happening throughout the whole year, and we've been seeing this year after year. And it's something that Fisheries in Ocean Canada does not have a control right now. There are set nets in the river. They kill fish. They kill fish besides salmon. So there's juvenile surgeons are being killed as well. So this is rather frustrating because when you have the recreational fishing community trying to push for selective fishing practices within our group, and so we can have an opening to catch a few fish, a very tiny percentage of fish compared to some of the other sectors, and yet we're not being granted those opportunities, and seeing fish being killed in nets that are not supposed to be killed, that is very, very frustrating. And when we point out these poaching practices, it isn't an ammunition, at least for my part anyways, to push for a total closure for the First Nation fisheries. But what I'm hoping for is that the leadership within the First Nation community would come out and actually vilify this practice. Let's work together and put an end to that, because it's in every single fisherman's best interest, to have that stopped, so we can have more fish coming back in the future. This is the part that it's really disappointing that has been happening. So we've been doing this for the last 20 years, and it's ongoing, and I don't see that problem going away anytime soon. What should be happening is the two groups should be working together in the river. We do utilize the same resource. Having all these recreational fishing closures in the Fraser River, it's not a win for anyone. It's not a win for the First Nation community. I personally think there's a huge amount of benefits having recreational fisheries existing in the lower Fraser River. I do believe that you only care about resources that you get to use. So if you're driving all these anglers away that no longer get to fish this river, when other challenges come along, these fish are not going to gain the support. All of these fishermen are not going to be devoting their time, money, and energy into river restoration, conservation, and other projects. So it is important to have these fisheries and there is a social economic benefit to it that the fish indirectly benefit as well. So that's really important, I find. So what's really disappointing is how the Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canada has handled the situation right now. The communication is not two ways. There's a lack of will to develop opportunities for the recreational fisheries. I'm not angry about not being able to fish the Fraser River right now. There are lots of other places to fish. But it's frustrating that there could be opportunities, yet we're not looking at viable options. And that is really frustrating. And we've been doing this for the last 10 years, over 10 years. And this is where we're at right now. So I do believe that for resource managers to do a good job, you need to be out there and see what's going on. You can't make sound management decisions by sitting in front of computers, looking at the numbers, getting all the feedbacks, and make those decisions. By coming out to fish with the anglers, by coming out to fish with the First Nations, you get to see the methodologies being used and see what the impacts those have on the fish. And then you can develop different options and make sound decisions. And same goes with different user groups. What I would really love to see is anglers working with First Nations. I would love to go out and film a First Nations communal fishery to see, because I've never been to one. So to see what's actually going on in a net fishery. So then I can make my own decision whether that's a bad practice or the good practice, or if anything needs to be changed. And same goes with having First Nation fishermen fishing with the anglers. Try out some of their own methodologies and see what works. And then we can have better understanding between user groups and share the resource. So what's the point of this video? I actually don't know. Doing this at 1 o'clock in the morning now. But it's basically I'm basically venting about my disappointment of the work being done in the last 20 years, where we really haven't gone anywhere, and actually we made things a lot worse than before. And I hope this video kind of provides enough information for you guys, so you can have a perspective on what the Fraser River fisheries is happening right now, and start having those conversations with your friends, with the politicians, and with other groups, and then maybe we can start brainstorming and develop a better understanding, appreciation, and solutions for the future of these fish, and for the future of our kids who maybe they'll get to catch these fish. Who knows, right? And isn't that what the point is? I don't want to lose having these opportunities in the future, and I'm sure you guys don't too. Because once these fish are gone, really there's no reason to fight anymore. Thanks for watching, everyone. I do have quite a few more fishing episodes coming up in the next few weeks. Actually, in fact, next week I have one more video coming out from the Yukon territory, but it's not a fishing episode, but it's actually a video kind of related to this talk. It's a conversation with a First Nations resource manager in the area. And I promise you, it's really informative, and I urge you guys to watch it as well. Anyway, so until next time, good luck fishing.